Regime change in Iran, a dangerous obsession? Welcome to Roh'sCorner, the podcast where we cut through the noise and dive deep into the geopolitical forces shaping our world. I'm your host, Roh, and today's episode is a powerful exploration of one of the most dangerous obsessions in U.S. foreign policy, the push for regime change in Iran. This isn't just about politics or diplomacy. It's about lives, sovereignty, history, and the future of an entire nation caught in the crosshairs of global power struggles. Today, we'll unpack the motives behind this relentless agenda, examine its historical roots, and explore what it could mean not just for Iran, but for the Middle East and the world at large. Segment 1: The Roots of Regime Change, a History of Intervention. It all started back in 1979, when the Iranian Revolution overthrew the US-backed Shah and ushered in the Islamic Republic under Ayatollah Khomeini. What followed was decades of tension, suspicion, and covert operations by the United States aimed at weakening the new regime. The CIA had previously orchestrated the 1953 coup that removed democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, replacing him with the authoritarian Shah Reza Pahlavi, a puppet ruler who served American interests for nearly 25 years. When the people of Iran finally rose up in 1979, they weren't just rejecting tyranny, they were rejecting foreign interference. Fast forward to the 1980s, and the US found itself playing both sides during the Iran-Iraq War, supporting Saddam Hussein with intelligence and even chemical weapons, while also secretly selling arms to Iran during the Iran-Contra scandal. This duplicity set the stage for decades of mistrust and hostility. Segment 2: The Narrative of Threat, How Iran Became the Enemy. Since the early 2000s, Iran has been painted as a rogue state, a sponsor of terrorism, and an existential threat to Israel and the West. But how accurate is this narrative? Let's break it down. Iran has never invaded another country. Unlike the United States, which has launched countless military interventions from Vietnam to Iraq to Libya, Iran has remained defensive. Iran supports resistance groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, yes, but these are often local movements fighting occupation. Labeling them terrorist doesn't erase the fact that many see them as legitimate fighters for self-determination. Iran's nuclear program has been used as a justification for sanctions, sabotage, and assassination campaigns. Yet, there's no conclusive evidence that Iran has ever pursued a nuclear weapon, only the capacity to enrich uranium, something many nations do legally. Despite this, the US and its allies have engaged in targeted killings of Iranian scientists and military leaders, including the infamous 2020 drone strike that killed General Qasem Soleimani. Segment 3: The Trump Era, Escalation and Lies. Under Donald Trump, tensions reached a boiling point. The US withdrew from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, in 2018, reimposing harsh sanctions that crippled Iran's economy. Trump's administration pushed a false narrative that Iran was weeks away from building a nuclear weapon. That claim has been debunked repeatedly. Meanwhile, US officials openly discuss regime change, with figures like John Bolton advocating for a Libya model, a euphemism for violent overthrow. But here's the truth: Iran has shown remarkable restraint. Even after repeated attacks on its soil, assassinations of its leaders, and economic strangulation, Iran has not launched a full-scale war. Its responses have been measured, strategic, and largely symbolic, like the January 2020 missile strikes on US bases in Iraq. Segment 4: The Double Standard, Who Really Sponsors Terrorism? One of the most glaring hypocrisies in the regime change playbook is the accusation that Iran sponsors terrorism, while the US props up extremist groups when it suits its interests. Take Al-Qaeda and ISIS, both were indirectly supported by US allies in the region. Or consider the Houthis in Yemen, who are fighting Saudi-backed forces armed and trained by the US. Even more disturbingly, the US has created and funded proxy armies across the globe, from Afghanistan to Syria. Groups like the Free Syrian Army and the so-called moderate rebels were often indistinguishable from jihadists. Meanwhile, Iran is condemned for supporting groups resisting foreign occupation like Hezbollah in Lebanon or Shia militias in Iraq. These are not mindless terrorists, they are national defense forces in the eyes of their populations. Segment 5, The Real Goal, containing China and Russia. Make no mistake, the push for regime change in Iran is not just about Iran. It's part of a broader strategy to isolate and weaken Russia and China. Iran is a key member of the BRICS alliance and a major partner in regional security initiatives with Moscow and Beijing. By destabilizing Iran, the U.S. hopes to fracture this emerging multipolar order and maintain its global dominance. Russia and China understand this well. Over the past decade, they've deepened ties with Iran through joint military exercises, energy deals, and diplomatic cooperation. They recognize that if the U.S. succeeds in toppling Iran's government, it will embolden further aggression against them. This makes Iran not just a battleground for influence, it's a frontline in the struggle between unipolarity and multipolarity. Segment 6, The Cost of Regime Change: Lessons from Iraq and Libya. If the U.S. truly wants regime change in Iran, it should look at the disasters it created in Iraq and Libya. In Iraq, the 2003 invasion led to chaos, sectarian violence, and the rise of ISIS. Libya descended into civil war after NATO helped oust Gaddafi, creating a failed state that became a hub for human trafficking and extremism. Do we really want to repeat this in Iran, a country 3 times the size of Iraq with a proud history, strong institutions, and a population that has consistently rallied around its government in times of crisis? Iranians may criticize their leadership, but when faced with external threats, they unite. Attempts to force regime change would likely strengthen the very government Washington seeks to overthrow. Segment 7, The Human Cost: Sanctions, Sabotage, and Suffering. Sanctions are not a peaceful alternative to war. They're a weapon of mass suffering. U.S. sanctions on Iran have caused shortages of medicine, medical equipment, and basic goods. Cancer patients have died because hospitals couldn't access life-saving treatments. Children have gone hungry. Families have been torn apart. And let's not forget the cyber attacks, such as Stuxnet, a virus developed jointly by the US and Israel that damaged Iran's nuclear centrifuges. Then there's the assassination of top nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh in 2020, an act of state-sponsored murder disguised as counter-proliferation. These actions don't make the world safer. They breed resentment, radicalization, and retaliation. Segment 8, The Israeli Factor: Netanyahu's War Agenda. No discussion of regime change in Iran is complete without addressing Israel's role. Israeli leaders, particularly Benjamin Netanyahu, have long pushed for military action against Iran. Netanyahu has falsely claimed that Iran is on the verge of building a nuclear bomb, a narrative designed to justify preemptive strikes. Israel's own nuclear arsenal, estimated at over 80 warheads, remains untouched by international scrutiny. There are no inspections, no sanctions, and no calls for regime change in Tel Aviv. Yet, any move toward nuclear capability by Iran is met with outrage and saber-rattling. This double standard is not lost on the rest of the world, and it undermines the credibility of Western claims about non-proliferation. Segment 9, The Future: Can diplomacy still work? Despite everything, diplomacy remains possible, but only if the US is willing to abandon its obsession with regime change. Iran has consistently said it will negotiate, but not under duress. It wants mutual respect, not ultimatums. It wants recognition as a sovereign state, not a target. China and Russia have called for dialogue, not confrontation. And many Americans, including veterans, diplomats, and scholars, have warned that another war in the Middle East would be catastrophic. We must ask ourselves, do we want peace, or do we want control? Segment 10, Final Thoughts: The World We Want. As we wrap up today's episode, I leave you with this: the push for regime change in Iran is not about security. It's about empire. It's about maintaining a global order where the US dictates who wins and who loses, who governs and who falls. But the world is changing. Multipolarity is rising. Sovereignty is being reclaimed. And if we want a future of peace, stability, and justice, we must reject the old mindset of domination and embrace a new era of cooperation. Thank you for coming to Roh'sCorner. If you found this episode insightful, please share it, subscribe, and leave a review. Let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay informed and stay awake.